Hey guys, Fox here. Thank you for your patience with the delay in episodes. We unfortunately had to change our recording platform about half an hour in, so the first 20 minutes of this episode is not the best quality, but I cleaned it up as best I can and it's still pretty listenable, I think. So, yeah, thank you for your patience. And also, there is a chorus of birds accompanying me. Can't do much about that because it's just where I live at this moment. So, yes. Thank you very much, guys, for your patience. Look forward to 2 additional episodes coming before the end of May. Enjoy the rice.
Where he lies. You want me what? Where he lies. Oh, where he lies, where he lies. Oh, where he lies.
Ni hao, konnichiwa, Fox des. And with me today is Nathan Anarchy. Welcome to
Hello.
Foxflix Rice. Flipped it round on you this time.
You did that on purpose. You monster.
Say hi, Nathan.
Hello.
Yes, so welcome to Foxflix Rice. This is officially our first May episode of Media Blasters May. In this episode, we are covering some older Tokyo Shock releases from way back in the day. Obviously, Media Blasters nowadays, very heavy focus on cult cinema, and they are in the process of reviving the Tokyo Shock label, which the latest big hit of that has been The Rise of the Machine Girls, which is selling very, very well right now. So congratulations to them. Has an English dub as well by the usual gremlins. If you're listening to this, you know who you are. So yeah, welcome everyone. What much is there to say? This is going to be an intense month. We've got 3 episodes coming your way. Some real bangers in there, as Nathan said. He got so excited that he didn't even want to record some episodes because he just wanted to get to one in particular.
Correct.
But, you know, that has to wait. We have a schedule here. It's not all just anarchy and press play and just ramble. Anything you want to say, Nathan? Kick us off before we start talking film?
Nothing at all.
Nothing.
Nothing whatsoever. I'm done. Goodbye.
Okay.
No, I think you covered everything there, mate.
Yeah, cool. Myself and Nathan actually haven't talked about what we've been watching in weeks, I think. We did the Hard Boiled episode and I watched that an ungodly number of times. And yes, after that, I took a bit of a break and went into the 70s for Japan. Had a bit of a 70s binge. So those that have been following along on Twitter and Letterboxd, I'm sure you've kept up with that. I did all of the Battles Without Honor and Humanity series in one day.
You madman.
Because you can't watch just one. So, and I really enjoyed that as a whole. What else did I watch? Oh, that Machine Gun Dragon. What's it called? The Bunta one?
That's it.
Yeah, and I really liked Okinawa Yakuza War, which we will talk about one day.
Really?
Yes.
Don't you tease me like that now.
I'm not teasing you. I really fucking liked it.
I'm holding you to that.
Yes.
I have physical recorded evidence that you said that.
He says that, but I'm the one who edits these, so.
You monster.
Anyway, yes. Yeah, and I've also watched some more of Nakajima's work. What else did I see? Can you remember, Nathan? Because I know we talked about some of them.
Battles, Okinawa Yakuza War, Machine Gun Dragon.
There was Dangerous International Trade in Kobe, or Dangerous Gangs
International Gangs of Kobe.
Yeah, because that's got like 2 titles, doesn't it? It's got like 2 different titles.
Dangerous Trade in Kobe.
Yeah, I think I watched that one and the other one.
Hang on, I'm just bringing up your Letterboxd. Never Give Up.
Yeah, I watched Never Give Up. I've been meaning to watch that for years, and I really, really liked it. It was not what I expected going in, but I definitely really enjoyed it in spite of its problems. I think that's a favorite of mine. Not like a mega favorite, but it's definitely up there.
International Gang of Kobe, Code of Wolves.
Code of Wolves, really like that. Yeah, that was really well done. Quick one on that. It sort of, and I think we did talk about this for a minute. It sort of felt like they were setting up for a film series with
Definitely.
that, but it just never. It was like they pulled out last minute, so they kind of wrapped the end of the film to wrap it all up.
Yeah, it's an odd one. I like the way it's structured. even if it doesn't quite work as well as it should.
Yeah, no, it just felt like there was more. There should have been more there. Again, Bunter's performance in it was excellent, and obviously Akira in that one. Really liked that. But yeah, I mean, last night particularly, I watched Legend of the Eight Samurai for the first time.
Ooh.
Really enjoyed that a lot. Good fun. Thought Hiroko. Too many heroes. It was Hiroko, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm trying to think, mate. That's another one I haven't seen for a long time.
It's the girl from Sailor Suit and Never Give Up.
Oh, wow, we're so well prepared.
Yeah, well, we're not prepared for this because this is off the cuff, but I just can't remember names today for some reason.
Hiroko Yakushimaru.
Yes, Hiroko, that's right. So I was right. I hate that when you just come out with it and it's right, but then it's like, well, is it right? But yeah, no, I thought she gave a really, really good physical performance in that. I mean, the stunts she had to do and some of the stuff, I was very, very surprised because the other films I've seen her in to this point, she's not normally in really physical films. I mean, yeah, there was a bit of it in Never Give Up in her debut, but here she's really like you can tell she was the action director. You know what I mean? And she
Yeah.
seems to just really be going for it. She just did everything that was asked of her from the looks of it, and so I was quite impressed with that. And the soundtrack is amazing. I don't care what anyone says. So yeah, no, I really enjoyed that. It's good fun. I think that's like one of my favorite. It's become one of my favorite fun samurai films, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, no,
sort
that
of
makes sense.
just a nice fantasy thing with demons and
I need to see some more of her work, actually.
yeah. I mean, I'm going through it just on a personal, so I'll let you know. But so far everything I've seen is good. Because I watched that. I think it was Detective Story a couple weeks back.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. I think you
That was
mentioned it.
yeah, that was funny. I mean, it wasn't super standout, but it was funny. Needs a HD re-release that one because it's another one of those 80s films that just looks great, but it's not shown in all its glory with the existing prints.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like, oh, you know. And speaking of which, apparently Legend of Samurai, Eight Samurai got a 4K release a couple of years ago. Curious to see what
Yeah,
that
that
looks
doesn't
like.
surprise me, actually.
Well, it was the biggest film in Japan in 1984. It's the highest grosser of the year. I'm actually surprised that it's not really talked about much in the West anymore.
There's plenty like that, though, isn't there?
Yeah, to be fair, but equally, it also seems like it's the perfect fit for an arrow to pick up or a Eureka. But
Yeah, maybe. Maybe not. Maybe. I don't know about that one. I mean, like I said, it's been a while since I've seen it, but it's kind of. I don't want to say aimed at kids, but it's very family friendly. Is that a better term?
yeah, I mean, it's based on a it's based on a novel that was based on an old Japanese fable. So, and I wouldn't really necessarily call it family friendly because it does do some things in there which you wouldn't really show young kids. Teens, yes, but young kids, no. So, I mean, I think its tone probably is that because it's fantastical. So I think that's why a lot of Westerners, because I've seen that too, a lot of Westerners view it as like a family friendly film or like an attempt at a family friendly film, which is fine. I can see that, but I don't think that's actually like 100% accurate, if you know what I mean, when you compare
I,
it to Japan's
mm,
actual family films of the time.
yeah, no, but I'm pretty sure that it was supposed to be. I think I got like a lower rating. It
Yeah.
was sort of Fukusaku. It is Kinji Fukusaku, isn't it? It
Yes.
was one of his attempts at making a not family friendly, but something for a wider
Yeah, no,
audience.
definitely. And he succeeded in that and excelled at it.
I'm gonna watch it again.
It's really, really well directed as well. I mean, I've seen a good chunk of Fuku's work now, and I don't think there's anything else in his filmography that is quite like it. At least his later films, especially post Yakuza stuff?
Not like that. No, not off the top of my head. I mean, we made plenty more Chambara and whatnot, but not quite like that one.
Yeah, because everything's like really beautiful. Everything's like really well framed and really well shot, and almost every frame is like interesting. There's a lot going on, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Not in
yeah,
terms of necessarily movement, but just it's picturesque. The aesthetic was all tied together nicely, so that stood out to me. Because obviously, I'm used to Chambaras tend to go either way, don't they?
They certainly do.
So
They most certainly do.
So yeah, but no, I am actually genuinely surprised, especially with there already being like a 4K master out there that, you know, like I said, a Eureka or Arrow haven't picked it up. Because I think it would fit, especially with the whole them releasing more Wuxia stuff and that kind of thing. You know,
Yeah,
Zoom.
it would fit. Yeah, you're right. Actually, it would fit well amongst stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
didn't think of that.
that's kind of where I was coming from with that. But yeah, I watched that and what else did I watch that I really liked? There was one that stuck out in my brain. Hang on, I'll look at my letterbox now. Oh, I liked Makai Tansho, the Samurai Resurrection film,
Yes.
which we'll talk about someday.
Really? You're not teasing me again?
No, I'm not teasing you. We're going to
Because
talk about it
that's one
someday.
I'd really like to talk about as well. A lot to
Yes,
chew on in that one.
I just enjoyed it. That was another Media Blasters release, by the way back in the day, an old one.
Shout out Media Blasters. He made some hell of a choices.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, those swell Yakuza. That was fun. That was loads of fun. I know, it's not your thing, but I mean,
I don't dislike it.
I'm a bit all over the place with stuff like that. So
It's fun enough. I'll
yes,
certainly be watching it again in my lifetime. Let's put it that way.
yes. Oh yeah, Yakuza Graveyard was the other one that I was trying to think of before from the 70s that I really like with Meiko Kaji in it.
You had one hell of a week.
Yeah, that was really strong, and I've still got more. I haven't watched this past week. I haven't really watched much, to be honest. And last weekend, obviously, we had the mini heat wave, which you know, I was lucky to get one film in. Let's put it that way, in my room that is an oven. Yeah, I mean that's what I've been sort of up to. What have you been watching, Nathan?
Well, I've also watched quite a bit, so I'm just going to cherry pick. I watched Blowback Love and Death from 1991 this morning, which is top class trash.
Riki.
The man himself with a Gatling gun mowing down hundreds of people. What more could you want from a movie?
Hey, we've
Nothing.
got our first Riki movie this month.
Have we?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, of course we have. Yeah.
Yep, first Mickey too.
That's right. Yeah, I didn't think of that.
Mm-hmm. So that'll be fun.
Speaking of Mickey, I watched the Ambition Without Honor films again.
Yeah, they're sitting there for me. I still need to watch those. The way I watch Mika is I kind of tend to binge him. So like I'll have a collection of stuff and then I'll watch like, I don't know, 4 or 5, you know, in a weekend or something, unless I'm
Yeah.
watching, you know, a series or something like that. And then I kind of like just put him on hold for a bit and then watch more. So, because he is one of my favorites as well, as especially as I've dived more into him as we've talked about in the podcast in the past. You know, but interestingly enough, the Miike film we will be talking about was my first Miike film way back in the day. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember you saying actually. But no, they were both good. Ambition Without Honor, the first one, is very straightforward V cinema.
Mm.
Doesn't really do anything special. You know where it's going.
Mm-hmm.
There's some interesting parallels with the lead actor, his real life and the film, because his father was Harumi Son, a Toei legend,
Right.
and he wanted to launch his son's career as a leading man. So they went into this film, and in the first film, he's a very desperate wannabe Yakuza. So it kind of mirrors his real life of trying to get into the movie biz, which is quite interesting. But the second one is top. There's a hell of a lot more going on, and it's really well written.
I saw your review of that basically. And you called it what, more of a straight Toei film?
No, someone
Or
else said
what
that.
did you say, Mike's most Toei film or something?
No, someone else said that, and I
Oh,
don't quite agree with it, but I can see where they're coming from.
right.
The first one is much more. Is it homage or homage? That word?
Whatever you like.
Whichever. It's that. I think the first one is much more Toei, in a debt to Toei, much more homages, much more references, and what have you.
Right.
Second film sort of does its own thing, and it's much more Mike.
Right, like
If that makes sense.
more Mike Yakuza or Mike being weird Mike?
A bit of both. A little bit of absurd humor, some more eccentric characters,
Okay.
more centralized on the themes that he works on, the family bond and whatnot. But it was very good. I don't want to spoil it because obviously you're going to be watching them soon.
Yeah.
But it's a good one. It's up there with some of his better Yakuza films, that's for sure.
Cool. Well, obviously I really like those, so hopefully I'm looking forward to it. Maybe this weekend I'll get round to it. We'll see. Okay, so moving into today's film slate, we have Gonin 1, Gonin 2, and Kamikaze Taxi. If this particular part of the episode suddenly sounds different, it's because we've had to actually change our recording software last minute. We got sort of yeeted out of the other one. And so we're trying something a bit new that might potentially work better for us. So apologies if there's a bit of a difference there, but we're doing what we can with what we have. Or as Nathan likes to say, the episode is doomed.
It is the cursed episode.
Yes, in all fairness, we have been trying to get this recorded now for about a week, and just life finds a way.
Curveballs.
So yes. Anyway, we are here now, and yeah. So Nathan's really enjoyed Ambition Without Honor. Like I said, I've enjoyed all the 70s stuff, and I've enjoyed Legend of the Eight Samurai quite a lot. So yeah, definitely recommend checking that out because it will make an appearance on the channel at some point in the future. Anyway, Gonin, 1995, directed by Takashi Ishii. I don't have the starring list because all of today's films kind of star an ensemble cast. So I'm not going to sit here and read off like 10 names. Like I said, pretty much all the films have quite a lot of protagonists and things in them, except maybe Kamikaze, but it doesn't. The herd gets thin there a bit as the film goes on. But yeah, there's quite a lot of names, so I don't want to sit here and read off a list of 10 names. Obviously, Gonin 1 is known for having Kitano in it, plays a hitman, brief role. What do you think of this film, Nathan? What do you like? You got a synopsis? What do you want to do? How do you want to tackle this one?
I've got a letterboxed synopsis.
Okay, tell me what the letterboxed gods say.
It's about as basic as it comes. 5 men plot to steal a large sum of money from the local Yakuza, but everything does not go as planned, and the men find themselves hunted down by contract killers. That's it. That's it.
Okay, I'm going to be blunt. That does not do this film justice.
Certainly doesn't.
At all. So, yes, no, that does not do the film justice. Nathan, what do you think of Gonin?
I love Gonin, but just to bounce off of that point very quickly, I actually have the UK DVD in my hand from Tokyo Bullet.
Oh, God.
Yeah, exactly. And their I won't read the entire synopsis here either, but theirs is also crap.
Okay.
Takashi Ishii's brutal, hyper-stylish, hallucinogenic roller coaster of a movie. And Takashi Ishii is Japan's answer to Quentin Tarantino.
So, I like Ishii's films a lot.
Same.
Especially the Black Angel ones. You know, they're favourites of mine. I think he only did the first one. He might have done the second one too. I can't remember.
Oh, wow. They spelt Jinpachi's name wrong on the cover as well.
What? Tokyo Bullet spelt a name wrong? Are you kidding me?
Wow, Jinpachi. Hey, Jim. Right. Anyway, Gonin.
Yes, for those that don't know Tokyo Bullet, they got the films over, but they weren't the best quality releases. And yeah, there's a bit of a history there with them that is, I personally avoid their releases where possible, which is why I have the Media Blasters version of Gonin and not Tokyo Bullet. Anyway, Gonin. It's a heist movie, essentially, as the plot kind of hints at, but it's very, very layered in social commentary and dynamics. A lot of the characters in this film are quite well written, I think. All of them that are involved have like a backstory of some sort. Some of it is typical, like, oh, I'm in debt to the accuser. The main character, who is called Bandai, I believe, he's basically an ex idol and he runs a discotheque, and he is in debt to the Yakuza and can't afford to pay. So he sort of also resents being in debt to them. So he kind of hatches this plan to lift. Is it 2 million? Or it's like 20 million or something. It's like 30 million. Anyway,
Yeah,
basically,
it's a lot.
it's a lot of money. So he hatches this plan to, instead of paying them, to steal their money and run away because they're threatening to close his club down if he doesn't pay. That part of it is typical Yakuza stuff. However, what you have to understand essentially about this film, if you're looking at it properly and not just as an action film, is it has a lot of societary commentaries in there in terms of post-bubble Japan, because the time this is set is during what became the original setting of like they called it the lost generation, which was the recession, the early 90s, obviously the bubble burst, and a lot of people found themselves really struggling financially. They either lost their jobs or they just couldn't afford to pay things. They were in way too much debt. Even if they were working, like they couldn't keep up with the payments because of interest and things like that. So there's a lot of background that went into this script, if you like. It's not a deep commentary film, I will say that, because it's still an Ishii film. But what I personally like so much about it overall is how well all of those issues are touched on and presented. It is presented very stylishly. So yes, before we dig a bit deeper into that, I mean, Nathan, your thoughts on that? Or
No, I agree completely. I mean, every character is certainly written very well for me. They're sort of all of them are presented as pushed into this desperate situation through no fault of their own. And I think it's important to note that it's based around the bubble burst, because it's a film that I think, obviously from the synopsis that we've just read and the back of the DVD case and what have you, it's another one of those films that tries to pigeonhole Ishii as a man of shock.
which, to be fair, he kind of is sometimes.
I agree. He definitely, but like Mike, there's always context to the violence. It's
Yes.
always there to push the point home rather than just, hey, here's a murder. Do you know what I mean? It's quite an intelligent script for the type of film that it is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in his previous work, I mean, he started out as a Roman porno director, I believe. He does have a couple of pink films, as they're called, in his later library, certainly in the 90s. But his kind of his niche, if you like, he tended to do more Gonin type films, I guess you would say. What I mean by that is not heist films, but he seems to like to revisit a lot of the same plots in a different way. When you look at his overall filmography, he almost always likes to take a look at societal issues, as Nathan pointed out, or more of the underbelly of Japan, and what these characters in his films would do in desperate situations or when pushed to an extreme stressful situation. For an example, a classic plot point is the usual rape revenge thing. He's explored that so many times in his films, including Gonin 2, which we'll get to in a bit. But here he's very much focused on the financial desperation of the majority of the characters involved, because they all do come from different backgrounds. What joins them together outside of two, there's two that know each other, Bandai and the cop character. The rest of them all meet through this disco, or through sort of a happenstance there's one character in particular who I think is the more shock factor, but it's not a shock because the guy's legitimately crazy. But he's crazy because he's basically snapped under the
Yeah.
pressure of losing his job. Because that particular character, spoilers by the way, because we are going to spoil all this, he murders his family, but that's not revealed until later in the film, and that's something which Ishii does a lot, I think. He'll present a character like this particular character. He presents as a desperate salaryman who has lost his job and is looking for work. The stress, he starts fights because he's so angry. This is how it's presented. Okay, it's not presented that he's crazy from the get go.
No, he's just vulnerable.
Yeah, vulnerable. I mean, there's a joke that I've seen mentioned around my Japanese friends and foreigners who live in Japan that the most dangerous characters out there are overworked salarymen.
Yup.
Genuinely speaking, from what I've seen and what I've heard, they will go off, some of them.
Well, I can imagine.
Someone literally said the scariest individual you can run into in Japan is not a Yakuza, it's a overworked, middle-aged salaryman. So, I mean, that's the type of thing you're dealing with there. I do think the film is very, very stylish. I really miss films like this. This for me has a tinge of nostalgia to it because it's very 90s, but in a very, very good way.
Oh, and big time.
I don't know exactly how to describe it, but it's a bit like if you watch an old 80s actioner out of Hollywood, for example, it's got a certain flavor to it. Your Lethal Weapons, your Robocops, your Terminators, and everything in between. They've all got Jean-Claude Van Damme stuff. They've all got a certain, like, to use a more modern term, I guess, vibe to them going on that is lost in next decade and etc etc. And here it's almost like a bit of I call it a bit of cheese because it's like it's not that the film itself is cheesy, but it does really indulge in itself at times. And again, just the visual design, the way it's shot, it's very, very moody. It's almost got like a noir overtone.
That's
Sort
what I
of,
was just about to say.
yeah, sort of like what Black Cat has, which obviously we talked about a couple of episodes ago. But it's just very, very, what's the word?
Moody.
Moody, yes, that is the word. And I think it helps elevate the story that's being told because you do spend this film is not a fast film. It's not a super slow film either, but it's certainly not a fast film. You get to spend time with each of the individual characters and how they interact with one another before the heist and after the heist. So you get a full arc with all of them.
Yeah, it's fully realized.
Yeah, exactly. Even to a degree, the hired hitmen have their own thing going on. Even though it's a lesser degree, they still have their own character arcs playing out, and so do the Yakuza. But I do think ultimately the Yakuza are probably the weakest part of this film.
Yep. Both films, in fact. Not to jump ahead.
So, and I mean, that feels strange for me to say because usually, like, I'm all about having that Yakuza element in a film and stuff, but here it's definitely more of just a catalyst and a cause and effect thing versus a focus, if you like, a strong narrative focus.
Agreed. I like the way he uses marginalized characters as well.
Are you talking about the foreigners and whatnot?
No. I mean, we are spoiling this, aren't we?
Yes, we're spoiling. Yeah,
Yeah, that's okay then. I mean, we got two two gay characters in this. That's a pretty huge part of the plot.
yeah, they're both the hitman, and one of them is played by Takeshi Kitano, Beat Takeshi as some know him, and interestingly enough, this was his first film after his scooter accident, and the reason his character wears an eye patch is because his eye was still leaking fluids as he was healing. He wasn't fully healed yet. And from what I understand, researching into this was originally he was going to have a bigger role. That Hitman character was supposed to be a bit bigger and a bit more we're supposed to get a bit more background with him and a bit more kind of not just killing people scenes. We still got a few, don't get me wrong, but apparently because of the accident, they had to reduce it down a bit. And fair play to Kitano for acting in that condition. I think the way they used him, given what he was able to do at the time, I think it was really smartly done. It's not typical Kitano in the way that his presence carries a scene. He's very much playing a side character here. You know, it becomes a main plot point later on when they're introduced, but we don't really spend a lot of screen time with them or a lot of, that sort of violent cop thing where you're just watching him for like 5 minutes and soaking in his psychological state or something.
Yeah, and I still think this is going to sound terrible, but I did speak to you briefly about this the other day. I do think he's one of the weaker aspects of the film, but for me personally,
Yeah, I mean, I think when I compare it to other Kitano performances, I still think he adds a little bit to the film, but definitely when you compare it to the
definitely.
whole of the film, he's definitely a minor character,
Yeah.
as horrible as that sounds.
Yeah, and just to move away from Kitano just for a second, but to stay on the gay theme, I love that the two main characters, I forget their name, Bandai is obviously in the closet.
Yeah, and I've forgotten the other guy.
Can't remember his name in the film. It's Masahiro Motoki. I can't
I
remember his
hate
name in
him
the
as an
film though.
actor, you know.
What?
Let me clarify. I don't think he's a bad actor, but there's something about him that agitates me. And I don't know if it's the characters he plays or the way he plays them because I've seen a few films with him now. I mean, this is the best one I've seen with him as far as I'm concerned. You know, he does do the role justice, but there's just something about him that I find a little bit irritating. It's almost kind of like, oh, what's his name? Eric Sang.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I find some of his comedy roles, and sometimes it depends on the role. It really depends on the role he's in.
No, I
Here,
get that.
he's okay for me. He's like okay, but normally he winds me up.
I totally understand that. I'm the same way with Tetsuya Fujiwara. It just
Yeah.
irritates me.
Yeah, so not to throw shade there or anything, but there's something about his acting style that just, like I said, it just kind of it's grating almost to me a little bit. But I think here, given the character he plays, he wins me over in this film. If you know what I mean. Like when he initially shows up, he's a bit irritating, but then it's like it gets better.
I really loved him in this. Really loved him.
I mean, he basically plays like a himbo type character where it's like he says he fleeces rich gay men for money by pretending to be an escort pretty much, but it's quite obvious he is actually gay, so
And I love this is just a really stupid random observation, but he looks like Jungkook from BTS in this. I
does
don't know
he?
if you're familiar with him or not.
I'm not familiar with the individual members. Obviously I know who BTS are and what they do and I know how big they are, but I'm not, you know me, I'm not as big into the Korean stuff, so
Yeah, he
like
really looks like Jungkook in this. But
does he?
anyway, yeah, back to the but yeah, and I think he had amazing chemistry in this with Koichi Sato. The
Yes, I
two of
agree.
them and this simmering pot of homosexuality, and then the way that ends. I cried in this movie, not gonna lie.
All right. Yeah, I mean, it did have a for me, it did still strike me a bit emotionally because there was kind of and I was surprised at this for an Ishii film because I've never really watched an Ishii film. I've enjoyed all of them, but I've never watched one and had one like make me feel anything emotionally, really.
No,
But this one definitely has some really good elements to it. You know, it had an emotional undertone to it that I'm not used to with Ishii films because Ishii films don't normally have a bit of an emotional gut punch, whereas there's a couple of points in this one that it nails that.
yeah, big time. I mean that train. It was just not a train station, you idiot. The bus station. The bus station kiss. My God, that had me in tears. Straight up, I was bawling.
Hmm.
And weirdly, the first time, this is probably the third time I've seen the film, but I've never cried at it before.
Right.
Weirdly. This time I did. That scene really hit me this time. I don't know why.
No, I get you. I mean, to be fair, like, so can we talk about Jimmy for a bit? I want to talk about Jimmy.
Hell yes, let's talk about Jimmy.
So I do have some problems with this film, and I think that one of the problems is Jimmy. Not Jimmy,
No!
not Jimmy the character. Hang on,
You
because
leave
I know
Jimmy
you're
alone!
no. Nobody leaves Jimmy alone in this film. You
Poor
kidding me?
Jimmy! He goes through a rough time, and now you're going to pick on him too?
Well, you know, he should have been a real Yakuza.
Poor Jimmy. Was he a drug? Oh, okay, you say what you're going to say, because I'm
Yeah.
confused on one aspect of his character.
Yeah, we can talk about that. But basically, there's this character called Jimmy who's blonde. I say he's blonde because that's an easy way to identify him because he's the only blonde in this. But he's sort of like the grunt of the family, and he's got this the Yakuza family, sorry, and he's got this Thai girlfriend who's obviously an illegal, right? Like they actually bring that up, and one of the problems I have with this film in its early stages is I don't think the film spends enough time with both of them to build the relationship. Because basically, what happens is Jimmy gets involved in this heist, and the heist goes down and everything. And then, sort of, once the heist goes down, there's this whole like 5-7 minute scene between the pair of them, and it's supposed to be this emotional thing because it's about the money and going back to Thailand, and it just kind of feels like it comes out of nowhere because the two characters, him and his girlfriend, are introduced before that point, but you never spend any time with them, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I'm following.
So it's kind of like that's one of the issues I found because I do find this film drags a little bit at points, and it just kind of felt like because there was no pretext built to that confrontation between the pair of them because it's supposed to be quite an emotional couple thing, right? Because it's like he doesn't want to go back to Thailand because he can't go back to Thailand. She wants to go back to Thailand with him, is under the impression that he's going back to Thailand with her. And then it comes out like she realizes that he can't. So she like gets really, really upset, which is obviously why. And then it's just like they have this, it's, I don't want to say fight because it's not really a fight, but it's just,
It's a little disagreement.
yeah, and but it goes on for quite a while, and it's supposed to be more emotional, and I don't think it really. I think again because you don't spend any time with both of them in terms of their relationship, because when they're on screen prior to this, they're mostly separate. So it's like completely separate situations, completely all within the context of the heist.
Yeah.
Apart from some things that set up that she's a working girl immigrant type thing. So it just kind of, to me, that came out of nowhere a bit.
Yeah, I can see that.
However, there is a bit of a payoff with that because Jimmy's the weak link. Basically, what happens is the family find out who hit the office through him because they kidnap him and his girl, and they just literally, to be blunt, they rape his girl to death in front of him while torturing him.
And they torture him bad too.
Yeah, they really, really do.
Brutal.
This is a typical Ishii thing. However, I have to say, something I was impressed with, which I don't think I've ever seen before, when they kidnap them and take them to the warehouse, well, I'm assuming it's an abandoned warehouse, and they torture them both, what the way it's shot is, it's not intense in the face over the top, it's shot from a very far distance.
Yeah.
But it's framed so both of them are in shot at the same time.
Yeah, he did the same thing in the second film as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. And I don't think I've ever seen that before, really, where it's like you've got multiple characters being tortured, but it's presented as one. if you
Mhm.
like. So that kind of was interesting to see because it wasn't crazy over the top. You know, it got the point across, but kind of in a more, how do you say, like a tasteful way versus a going extreme, but you
Yeah.
still kind of understood the level of extremity of the torture itself.
Yeah, it doesn't stoop to the lower depths of Japanese exploitation, that's for sure.
No, but it does get the point across, and it is
Big
very
time.
sad. And that's where I kind of found it a bit strange because I guess that's more of a commentary on, you know, obviously on the immigration problem at the time because there was a high amount of immigrants in Japan that was viewed as an issue, illegals and things like that. Because you had people just crossing over to try and get a better life. And then you had, you know, because of the economic situation, the reality of the economic situation there, unfortunately, it was like usually you'd have women that were less fortunate, they would end up working the hostess scene or getting involved in red light district stuff, all that kind of thing. I think this film does a good job kind of presenting that side of things. It also at the same time doesn't really stick the landing too much.
What you mean the outcome of Jimmy's?
Yeah, like the outcome's fine. Like I think that's good, but I don't think it spends enough time with both of them to sort of like give the audience enough there to really care about it. It feels like it's more of a they care because it's shocking and because it's wrong rather than like you've built up a connection with these characters and they've just
Yeah.
been killed in the most horrific way possible outside of Jimmy.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. For me, I was fine with it because to me, Jimmy was a peripheral character in the way that he was treated by the Yakuza family. So I was kind of okay with him being treated like that in the film as well. It's like he comes in, he does his little bit of the thing, then he goes, and I was okay with that because there's enough characters elsewhere for me to concentrate on. But that's a me thing. Do you know what I mean? It's
No, I get that. And I mean, that's where I'm saying, like, I've just realized in you saying that what the problem kind of is for me is that he is a peripheral character. You're absolutely right. But then the way it shifts is it like that scene, for example, it's like it's suddenly he's given a main character slot out of
yeah,
nowhere and it doesn't really gel. So that's where I'm saying it was kind of odd. Like I'm fine with him being peripheral, you know, and all that stuff. And I don't mind his arc or, you know, what happens to him is pretty horrific. And I think all of those bits are done. I just think there's times where they try to focus too much on him, maybe.
yeah, and to spoil it even more, but hey, we've gone there anyway. The outcome of his scene where he busts into the Yakuza office, right? I've got to ask this question because there's two things about this film I've always wanted to talk to someone about. One, has he scalped her to wear her hair?
I thought he had a hair on his face, yes.
Lovely. Okay. The second thing, drugs or mental health, Jimmy? Or
I
both?
believe he's presented as a drugs thing because there's a line I can't remember exactly because it's been a couple of weeks. Because obviously, like we talked about, there's been a bit of a delay in recording, but I believe there is a line in here where it's talked about that he's going to go. Oh, that's right, yeah, he's going to go and get drugs or something, and she's like against it in
Oh,
their
okay.
argument. There's like
Okay.
a line thrown in, so he does present as like a tweaker, if you like.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing that's always got me. I wasn't sure whether it was both, whether he might have had mental health problems and
I think he's supposed to be the dumb delinquent type.
yeah,
Sorry, so he's not the brightest anyway. But I think it's drugs. I think he's a drugs element. The commentary on the drug problem at the time.
Kippei Sheena. I don't know if that's how you say his name, but I really like him as an actor. I think despite the limited screen time, I think it's quite a performance.
Yeah, no, definitely, and it's important. I mean, that's the thing about Jimmy, which is why I wanted to highlight it. I mean, he is important. I just think the execution of him, not as in his actual execution, but the execution of him in terms of the overall story, could be a bit better.
Yeah. No, I like I say, I totally understand where you're coming from.
Let's see what else. So I guess we could talk about. Should we talk about the cop quickly? I mean, we're jumping around, or should we talk about the salaryman?
Naoto Takanaka, huge favorite of mine.
Who's he? Is he the salaryman or something? I don't have the
Salaryman.
okay. I don't have the cast list up. I said this is one of those films that genuinely is pretty stacked cast wise. And to be fair, I haven't seen a lot of this cast in other films yet. I've only seen like one or two, maybe. Well, maybe
Oh, you will.
small handful. Yeah, I know. Well, it's like the Toei boys, isn't it? It's like I've seen so much of the Toei crew now. But yeah. So I think his performance is really, really well done.
So good.
So he meets Bandai by being at a batting center, and Bandai's in a mood because he's always in a fucking mood in this film. But Bandai, as we've talked about, is the idol who's no longer an idol because of a scandal, and he's the disco owner, and the setup for the scene. This is the beginning shot of the film, pretty much after some establishing shots. But it's like he's swinging at the batting center and he's just missing everything. And the salaryman's with him, and the salaryman like gives him a bit of lip over it, if you will. And then his phone rings, and he turns around and is like, "Can you please get that because I can't concentrate on my swinging otherwise." And at this point, he's still being pretty polite. Bandai just is being moody and ignores it, and then he snaps back at him, and then that sets him off. But it's all done slowly. It's not like a sudden flashpoint. And then Bandai finishes and is going to his car, and out comes the salaryman with the baseball bat, and he attacks him in the parking lot, attempts to, and he fails, and he gets his nose broken essentially, and that's when it's like Bandai. He's like, "I'm going to sue you," and that's when Bandai's like, "Okay, like I've just snapped and beat this guy, even though he snapped and attacked me first." So that's how they end up getting acquainted. Because he takes him back to the disco in the car, and there's a setup in the car where he calls his family. Okay, this is the establishing moments rather of his family. He supposedly calls up his daughter and is like, "Daddy's away working, blah 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 blah. Won't be home." And he hangs up the phone, and then Bandai finds it amusing that he's got a kid, and they talk about it a little bit, and he that's when you start finding out his story. So his story is he's gotten laid off, and he's out of a job, and he hasn't told his family he's out of a job because he was supposedly in a really, really good job and was making a lot of money, but now it's really hard because he's been out of work for an extended period of time. I don't think it reveals how long, does it?
Not to my knowledge, no, and I certainly didn't make a note of it.
So, I'm just pulling this off the top of my head. So, but yeah, it kind of gives you the background that he's this salaryman who's down on his luck. And he's done that thing where he hasn't told his family out of shame, and that's a common for anyone who's watched a lot of Japanese media or knows anything about the culture, or again is just kind of with it on this sort of thing. That was apparently really common back then. If someone lost their job, and they were in a family, there would be a real shame about telling the wife or the kids. So they would try and like maybe hide it for a little bit and hopefully get something else and then make up some excuse.
Yeah, I've certainly seen it in films before.
Again, that's another commentary on stuff that was going on at the time. Because the other thing about his character is he's commenting that Bandai is rich. Bandai's not rich because he's in debt to the Yakuza and everything. But the impression is because he drives a nice car, wears a flashy suit, he must still be living like bubble era.
Yeah, and oh man, it's just such a. It's probably maybe not the greatest performance in the film, but it's quite a performance.
Yeah.
The salaryman Takanaka, he's like a big ball of manic energy and anxiety that's just ready to explode at any given moment.
Yes, because he shoots someone during the heist. As Nathan said, he's like, as the film goes, it builds this unpredictability about him. Like, initially, you get the impression, like, okay, he's just an angry salaryman. But then he starts to like become erratic. And this plays out during the heist because he shoots one of them, he kills one of them, even though the impression that's given before the heist is that he's quote unquote shit scared of, shit scared of actually killing anyone. And yeah, he basically gets called a name or something happens during the heist and he just ends up killing someone. And that obviously completely screws up the heist in a way because it turns what should have been just a simple money grab now into I've killed a high ranking member of Yakuza or whatever.
Yeah. Sorry.
I mean, the heist itself is like comical almost to a degree.
It is, yeah. I just had that line from. Have you ever seen The Young Ones?
Oh, years ago.
I just had that line of Rick Mail shouting, "You killed a hippie!" Don't know why. When you said it, it was just like, wow. Anyway, back to Gonin. Sorry. You killed a hippie. What? Anyway, Jesus, what's going
Compost
on
for the
today?
trees. I mean,
No, the cursed episode.
anyway, yes. So the heist doesn't go well. It gets done, but it doesn't go well from the get go. There's issues with Jimmy letting them in and stuff. Like, it's just a cluster. The whole thing is a cluster. They still get away with it, but it's just, there's
Just
lots. Yeah, it's a stumbly performance, let's put it that way.
yeah,
Back to the salaryman. So I guess we should talk about after this heist and everything happens, they send Yakuza family after them, and the family members can't quite find them or kill them. Like they're being defended quite well. They're still armed. The group that's done it are still armed and they're defending themselves. So initially they were just sending family members out to hunt them down one by one, and that didn't work. So eventually it leads to Takeshi Kitano's character and his partner being brought in. That relationship dynamic is its own is its own thing.
yeah. And it's been so long since we watched it, in all fairness.
Yeah, I think he's supposed to be like a protege at the same time.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's like he's the inexperienced one, because he does make a lot of like rookie mistakes, if you will. But I think Kitano really sells that performance as much as he works with it. And the reason why I say they're brought in is then they go looking for it. The first place they check is the salaryman's house or apartment.
Oof.
This is interesting because this film is kind of a sort of pseudo mix of genres in a way. So this one kind of goes almost J-horror-y because it's presented as he arrives home and his daughter's playing the piano, and it's all presented fairly above board, blah 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 blah. But there's something not right with it. It's not revealed, but you can kind of tell that there's just something that isn't quite right with the film.
Yeah. Shit gets dark quick.
Yes. And then basically basically it's revealed slowly that he slaughtered his family at some point. We don't know when, we're not told, but it's like he's walking through the house and there's the corpses around and it's doing that thing where it's like flashbacking to the corpses being alive.
Yeah. I'm guessing it must have been. I mean, I don't know anything about body decomposition, but it's got to be weeks or at least a month because there's lots of flies and the brief shot that you get of the daughter, she does look. What's the word? Rotten, for
Yes.
lack of a better term.
It's definitely been a long time period. And it's done really well, I think. And it's
Yeah.
done in a very surrealist sort of way. Because it doesn't quite go full J horror, but it's definitely got a tinge to it.
Yeah, especially when he's talking to himself in the mirror.
Yeah, so that's when it becomes absolutely clear that he is really snapped. Obviously he snapped a while ago. The two assassins show up and they kill him because he's taking a bath with his wife's corpse. And this is
As you
what's,
do.
yeah. Japanese baths, man.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, yeah, and the thing is, like, Katano's character appears and he's still going through his head. He's having an episode or whatever. So he doesn't really think Katano's like real almost.
That's right.
Well, he does think he's real, but it's kind of like oh, what are you doing here? It's like he doesn't have a problem with the fact that there's a stranger in his house or anything like that. Like, he's just like,
Well, you just sat there next to your dead wife in the bath.
yeah,
That
stewing.
water must have been cold.
God knows. Maybe he put the corpse in there and ran it. I don't know. It's just, yeah.
Oh dear. Anyway,
And then I don't really want to spoil some of what happens with Kitano's character because I think those little moments are gold. So I don't want to spoil those for people.
yeah, I know what you're referring to.
Yeah, but Ishii does push the envelope a bit there.
He certainly does.
And then the other main character's motivation is this cop, ex-cop, who became a bouncer. And then he got involved because he's trying to win his wife back, his wife and child.
Through the means of cash.
Through the means of cash, yes. And unfortunately, they get murdered. Spoilers, everybody dies in this film.
Huzzah! Just the way I like it.
And I mean, I do mean everybody dies in this
Yeah,
film.
literally.
That's not an exaggeration. So yes, I do kind of find the decision to kill off Bandai not at the end interesting because it adds another layer to the film, but it also adds time to the film at the same time.
Yeah, I was just about to mention that actually. That I think it's interesting that he kills off characters not in the typical order you would expect,
Yeah.
and I like that personally.
Yeah, I mean, it's different, right? Like, it works. I mean, I'm personally not against characters dying or staying alive. I don't really care. There's I'll save that for Kamikaze Taxi. I'll get to that. But yeah, so that was Gonin. It was a success at the time. I couldn't find any box office numbers or anything on it, unfortunately. But as far as I know, it was well regarded. It wasn't like the biggest film of the year or anything like that, but it came at a time before a lot of films they were sort of looking at those issues and presenting them independently.
Yeah,
It was one of the first films to do that.
yeah, I'm not sure. Sorry.
Gonin is really good. I do actually highly recommend Gonin 1 to anybody. It's just really, really substantial. I would love to see it get a re-release, especially the director's cut.
Big time.
I would love to see it get like a proper Blu-ray or something.
I'm in complete agreement. I think it desperately needs rediscovery. I think it's essential viewing personally. I absolutely love it. I don't think it's quite perfect, but it's right up there for me.
Yeah. It's a shame, really. Ultimately, all three of these films that we're talking about in this episode have largely been forgotten by modern audiences,
Hmm.
and in the West especially. And I think that's kind of unfortunate because I think Gonin and Kamikaze both deserve to be kind of more cemented in people's conscious who like
Definitely.
Japanese cinema because the issues they both deal with, for that time period, it's very well done. It's hard to explain if you don't know Japanese history and if you don't know sort of what we're talking about. But in general, I kind of find that the 90s get glossed over a lot in terms of nowadays, in terms of these types of films outside of something that is considered a one car Y level classic. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of films like this that have just, for whatever reason, kind of outside of the early 2000s or whatever, they've kind of just disappeared from people's consciousness now.
Yeah, agreed. I think I'm hoping that it will sort of come back round. I think these trends are quite cyclical, and we sort of went from the early 2000s when it was all about let's get as much extreme East Asian cinema as we can. There's sort of like there's been this slow turn back to more artsy festival type stuff now. So I'm hoping it will come back round and things like you say, Gonin and Kamikaze will find their place again, as it were,
Yes.
because both are very highly regarded critically.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing which is a bit crazy about it because I think when you introduce Gonin to most people, I think because it's done by Ishii, I think a lot of people write it off.
But yeah,
They think it's just another Yakuza action film, and it's not.
Yeah, I mean, like the UK DVD. I mean, you see that in a shop and pick it up, and you're expecting, that they've thrown Tarantino's name over it. They've thrown all these sort of like wild claims and whatnot, and that's really not the film that it is.
No, there's a lot more to it than that. Unlike Gonin 2.
That's exactly, you took the words right out of my mouth.
So Gonin 2 was pretty much an immediate follow-up, and there's a lot I like about Gonin 2. There is,
Same.
personally. Gonin 2 is basically the same plot, subsumed with 5 women. And that's not what makes it bad, by the way. Before
Far
anybody
from.
thinks, the women are the strongest part of the film.
Yep.
For some reason, when I was watching this, I had to kind of look it up again because I didn't think it was directed by Takeshi Ishii initially during like the first 20 minutes,
I can
because
see that. Yep.
Ishii has like a certain charm to his films, like a certain way of presenting, especially in the 90s and early 2000s. He has like a very specific kind of style of filmmaking that if you're familiar with it, you can recognize it, right? I'm not
Yeah.
saying he's as good as Wong Kar-wai, but it's a bit like when you're watching a Wong Kar-wai film,
No, he's better.
when you're watching a Wong Kar-wai film, it's unmistakably Wong Kar-wai. And I do think that, again, I'm not sure if he had an actual different cinematographer on the picture. Wasn't able to find that out. But it does feel like he just doesn't hit the same visual marks, both from a visual style standpoint and from a narrative standpoint, the way it's all tied together.
Agree completely. I think I put in my letterboxd review when I rewatched this, and this isn't quite a fair statement, but Gonin 2 is basically the sort of low rent, trashier version of Gonin.
Yeah, to a degree.
It feels more like a V cinema production than
Yeah.
Gonin.
But it doesn't carry that necessarily consistently carry that sort of like, as me and Nathan call it when we talk, we call it like that classic V-cine trash.
No. There's flourishes here and there that sort of set it apart. It's an odd film.
Yeah, I think so. If we back up to the beginning, oh, by the way, on Gonin 1, the sound design was amazing. I miss sound design like that.
Yeah, and the soundtrack, wow.
Yes, which they reuse here in Gonin 2 pretty much.
Yeah.
I think Gonin tries to do a bit too much at once. Because the big thing which stuck out to me in the beginning of the film is there's a male character. I've forgotten his name. I know he's a famous actor. Is it Ken something?
Ken Ogata.
Ken Ogata, yeah, that's what was going through my head. So the setup with him is he owes money to the Yakuza.
Hey.
If he doesn't pay up, they're going to burn down his factory. His wife's with him at the time. They rape his wife. His wife, as a consequence, has a complete emotional breakdown and hangs herself ultimately. But what really bugged me about this whole thing was his character doesn't seem to react to it. This really, really bugged me. And it didn't really endear me to having him as part of the plot because while she's alive, after it all happens, he's like, he doesn't seem to care.
Interesting.
Like when you're watching it, he cares after she kills herself, but when you're watching even how he goes to her after it's happened and how
Oh, sorry. Right, it's all just clicked for me. Right. You mean he doesn't react? I thought you were talking about the death of the wife, but you're talking about he doesn't react to the rape.
yeah, like everything
Yes.
that leads up to the death, he's sort of treating her like
Normal. Ish.
not even normal. I don't know, because when they're introduced, he fawns over her. He's clearly like, madly in love with her. That is
Mhm.
introduced, but as soon as she's raped, he doesn't like try and comfort her or try and
N
like, I don't know, just make sure she's okay. He doesn't really seem to.
No, he's quite indifferent, isn't he?
Yeah, which is what really it bothered me personally because I was like watching this and I'm like, hang on a minute, this horrific thing's just happened to the love of your life, and you, she's still alive, thankfully, and it was just odd to me.
Yeah, no, I get that as well. It's an interesting observation, actually. To me, it was kind of like he was burying his head in the sand rather than having to deal with it.
Well, that's what I mean. It was like he was burying his head in the sand, but it was clear that there was a lot wrong with her because she showed mental distress. Okay, it wasn't like when she hung herself, this was out of nowhere or anything. The
No.
way it was presented, the effects on her mental health from that incident is clearly shown, and he just does nothing. He's just kind of like, I mean, there's at one point where he turns around to her and says, like, "You can't just stay in bed all day," or whatever.
Yeah.
It seems very, I guess, lack of empathy and lack of understanding. I don't know exactly how to word it, but it really was
No, I know what you
strange.
mean.
It was strange to me to see because normally when that sort of thing is presented in films of this era and after, there's usually a lot more emotion behind it.
Yeah, like I say, I think I just read it as that he was trying to sort of snap her back to normality by being indifferent, if you will. And I think that indifference then leads to his snap when she hangs herself.
Yeah, because he does just seem to be completely almost detached from it. And not even as in the sense of he's just getting on with things. He seems to be intentionally detached.
Yeah,
Because even again, right after it happens, he doesn't seem to make any effort. It just cuts to the next. It's just like he gets at home and then it's next day. And
yeah. But I think that I think it also highlights my personal biggest problem with the film is that it's underwritten.
yeah, so I definitely feel like there's a lot of it that is underwritten. And equally, I feel like personally, the editing. So I know I've been talking about editing a lot recently,
No,
but
crack on.
the editing of the story itself, I think the beginning of the film, like the first 30 minutes of the film, it's not good. Because I think it tries to introduce too much too quickly. So the purpose of Ogata's character is he essentially becomes the Grim Reaper, right? Like that's the thing. After his wife kills herself, he becomes this just angel of vengeance. But the thing is, all of the women that are involved in the heist, they all have their own background where they've been wronged in some severe way. So
Yeah.
as much as his character is good and does end up being some of the best action sequences in the film, it feels almost unnecessary. Like it feels like you could have cut him out and focused just on all six women.
Yeah, it feels like Ishii's taken 2 scripts and just slammed them together.
Yeah, exactly. It's really kind of confusing in that regard because when the film finally gets everything in place and it gets going, it works. But I still think it's trying to do a bit too much at once a lot of times
Yep.
that just doesn't really.
And I think the strange one with this one as well, I've actually made a note of this, is it's not a particularly long film, but it feels like it is. I mean, I think the heist doesn't happen till about 40 minutes in.
Yeah, it's
And the weird thing is that for me, all the female characters, them despite them being the leads, they're all underwritten. And for some reason, Ishii decides to spend probably way in fact, no, he does spend way more time with the Yakuza than he did in the first film, and it's like, if you'd have spent the 20 minutes you wasted building up Yakuza characters that aren't even important, you could have spent that. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. I mean, there is one Yakuza character who's important, and that's what's his name, the one who's actually involved in the heist, who betrays
Yeah,
the. But it does spend a bit too much time on the aftermath of the heist from the Yakuza's perspective.
yeah,
But I think also that's to tie more in with Ogata going around and slaughtering them. Like Nathan said, I personally would have rather spent more time with the women. The women do, with what they're given, they deliver excellent performances. They really do
agreed.
with what they're given. And a couple of them have gone on to do some really big films.
Hmm.
It's odd to me because, like I mentioned at the top of the show, I'm a big fan of the Black Angel series. Did Ishii do Alone in the Night as well? Was that one of his?
Yes, yeah, because that's my favorite film of his.
Yeah, so and it's like he's no stranger to having a really strong female lead
Not at all.
that's really well written, even if a bit tropey. For some reason here, again, I don't know how to explain it. It just feels like Nathan said a bit undercooked.
It just exactly, and it just has. There's none of the emotional resonance in the first film because they're undercooked.
Yeah,
It there's just nothing there. It's like here they are, this happens, and then you've got Kanagata on the side being awesome and slashing Yakuza, and it's like it just doesn't. I think Gonin 2's biggest problem is that it's called Gonin 2.
yeah. I mean, that is a problem. You know, obviously, it's because it's based on the principle of the five, which is
Yeah,
why it's called Gonin. But even if you took that title away and just gave it its own film, I wouldn't think it was that good.
no, I mean, I think did I say this to you the other day? I enjoy it as I don't want to call it a pure action film, but you know what I mean. I enjoy it for its action elements, whereas the first film is this big entire package.
Yeah, I mean, I think the dynamics between the women is interesting in this film. And I think a couple of them, I wouldn't be able to tell you which ones because I didn't look them up, but a couple of them have stronger individual arcs. But
Yes,
I think it does feel a bit rushed. That's the other side of it. As Nathan pointed out, this film is quite short, but it does feel long. And there's time spent on things that feels like it shouldn't be.
yeah, agreed.
You know, I mean, there's some really nice visual shots, and I mean, aesthetically, the film is quite pleasing. But there's just, like I said, it feels like it's trying to accomplish way too much without enough script, enough budget, enough time.
Agreed.
And again, the Ogata thing feels a bit forced, even though that's how the film is introduced. It's kind of because I'll be honest, going into it, I wasn't expecting Ogata because I haven't seen two before. I'd only seen one because I got it before they put out the deluxe pack of two, which I've got now. Before I knew about the film, I was expecting Gonin 2 as in another Gonin, and then when I found out the film was about all women performing a heist and stuff, I wanted to make sure it was the same film that I
Yeah,
was thinking of. And then when I was watching it, I was like, who is this guy, Ken Ogata? Why are we focusing on him? What's going on? It didn't make any sense because it took up so much of the film. So I don't know. Again, it's not that it's a bad film. It's
no,
just
it's just not great either.
yeah.
For me, it's got two high points. I think although it doesn't necessarily belong in the film, I think Kanagata's performance is terrific. He's great. Even if cohesively it doesn't come together as a whole, his actual performance is really good.
Okay. I have to be honest. His wife wrapped in a sleeping bag thing in the car. People who know me know exactly what I'm going to say now. I couldn't help but just when that shot came on, thinking she looked like a metapod. Because it was just so random, and I was like, you know, it's like metapod uses harden, well, his wife uses rigor mortis, you know, defense plus 10, but it's just that was like a really random element added to his character out of nowhere.
Yeah, see, I didn't mind it at
I
all.
mean, it worked, like it did work, but it was sort of like, okay.
The only random thing about the woman's body for me was because I've seen similar elements to that before in other films. The random part for me was when there's some scenes happen later on, and two of the women find the body in the car.
Yeah, and then they're like, "We're gonna take it."
Yeah, but before they take the body, because I was like, oh, okay, they're taking the body to him. I get that, blah blah blah. But before that, they put the seats down in the back of his car, so the dead body of his wife is sat in the passenger seat of the car. But these two women put the seats down in the back of the car, lay in the back of the car together and just have a chat about life with a
Yeah.
dead woman in the car.
I mean,
That was fucking random.
I love that. That to me is just so okay. I really enjoy like femme fatale films. Like
Mhm.
Nathan knows this. It's a big subgenre that I'm like a real big fan of. But when I say I enjoy femme fatale films, it's not like the old stuff. It's more like your girls with guns and your Iron Angels, Angel Terminators, your Black Angels, and Zero Woman films. I've got a bit of a soft spot for them. Most of them, even the ones that are bad, you know, and it's just like that to me was so typical of that genre in a way because it's like, yeah, they've got a dead person in the car, but they just don't care. They're just going to have a little girly chat about some girly stuff for a minute.
Yeah, that's what I didn't get though. I would have been fine with it for that reason too. But before that, they were like, "Oh, holy shit, there's a dead body in the car," and then he edits it, it comes back, and they're just having a chat.
Yeah, I
It was
mean,
like, what?
that's the thing about some of the editing. Now, I thought that there was some interesting edits, like in particular in the lead up to the heist. Where it introduces the five women, and
Yeah,
it kind of does it in this way that it all flows together, as in like they're physically meeting each other at the same time.
yeah,
And I liked that a lot. That was kind of unique. I haven't seen that too often in a Japanese film, but I thought that that was pretty cool. But then there are these random cuts and random edits to things that is just like, wait, what?
yeah. And just to bounce off of what you were saying quickly there about the heist, again, this is a personal thing, and this is the other thing that I thought was the strongest aspect of the film, apart from Kanagata, well, his performance rather. I think the heist is great, and I think it's far stronger than the heist in the first film. If we're talking about purely about a heist,
Yeah, about the scene itself. The only thing about the heist that is a bit, the scene itself is great, but I think it gets a bit confusing at points because of the way it bounces between things.
okay, I can see that.
Do you get what I mean? Like, I think I like the scene. I thought it was great. I thought it was sort of comedic, and I thought it kind of got all the points across, and it revealed some of what you already knew. But I think when the heist itself starts falling apart, I think it kind of the editing didn't help. I think the scene started to kind of buckle a little bit, if you know what I mean.
Yep, I can see that.
Um, because again, it kind of it's like again, it was trying to do a bit too much at times, but
Yeah,
it worked for that scene. Like I said, it's a really odd one to explain because it's like for me at least anyway. I was watching it and I was kind of losing track of some people and what was going on and who was what and what was happening. And I
yeah.
guess that was kind of the intention of it, but
Even so,
it didn't feel like that was the intention in a way. But I
yeah.
don't know.
No, I get you.
So, but yeah, I definitely think the heist in that film was way stronger than Gonin 1. And I do think as well, I suppose, one of the things that lets this film down is there's too many betrayals.
Yeah,
There really, really is. And
a stupid amount.
I'm not talking about like, oh my God, a twist. This is like random, like, just like, I'm work
Matter of fact,
Yeah, it's like and these characters that are supposed to be together or know each other or working together, and then it's like then they're not, and it's not necessarily because one's evil, it's just because one suddenly doesn't care. And then it's
mm-hmm.
like one betrays, but then bet- d- there's one who betrays one character, teams up with another, but she's not really betrayed the first character. Then she betrays them. Then he turns up and betrays her and then shoots her. And then, like, another one in the group betrays another person. And this is all within a space of like 5-10 minutes, by the way. I'm
It's
not,
nuts.
I'm not exaggerating.
It's just, oh,
Uh,
it's nuts.
yeah. So, I think when you look at Ishii's films, I think he's done other films that are much better at this whole revenge and female revenge plot thing. I think he's done
hmm
other films that are way better, um, especially badass females and strong leads and things like that. I mean, granted, again, the women are great in this. It feels like it had so much potential to be more than it was.
Yeah.
Um,
Especially in that era as well. Like you said, there's so many female-led action films, coming out of that V cinema thing and the mid-90s. And it just, I don't know, you expect more.
yeah, um, and that's the thing. Like, I was expecting it to be when I was reading the reviews and when I saw yours and others and things, and I was like, okay, this is bad. I figured it might be one of those things where, because I know a lot of people don't like those films because they're too melodramatic or something. You know what I mean? We've talked
Mm,
about this before because my favorite era is obviously 80s and 90s. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still really enjoyed the 70s stuff, but my favorite era of film is 80s and 90s cinema and early 2000s. And for the 90s stuff in particular, there's just, as you said, there's so much of this kind of film that was done really well, either genuinely well, like surprisingly amazing, or just kind of like the right kind of cheesy B movie that just worked because
yep.
everything came together. This misses, unfortunately. By the way, to point out, some of what ties this into Gonin 1 is it uses the same locations. So, like, the disco makes another appearance as a
Yeah, I was
hideout,
just about
and
to say the disco.
yeah. So that's kind of part of what ties the two together. But other than that, there's no crossover on characters or anything.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's just disco. Now, this was the second time I've seen this. Apparently, Jinpachi Nezu has a cameo in there, but I certainly didn't spot it. The cop from the first film, but I've never spotted it.
Oh, right. No, I mean, I didn't look for it, so who knows? So,
But
yeah.
yeah, I think I've got much more to say on it, to be quite honest, mate.
No, me either. I don't have much more to say. Kamikaze Taxi, Masato Harada, 1995. You can lead with this, Nathan, because I know you really like this film. So let's go.
Well, I really don't know where to start with this, to be quite honest with you. I tell you what, I'll read a synopsis. That's probably the easiest place to start.
Full disclosure: myself and Nathan watched the director's cut of this film, not the international cut. So
Yeah, and there's a big difference in time run as well, isn't there? I think it's about 50 minutes.
yeah, it's a significant cut.
Let's have a look here. Right. A young foot soldier in the Yakuza seeks revenge when his prostitute girlfriend dies after a session with a high ranking Japanese politician with a taste for torture. He sets out on a kamikaze mission to kill his bosses and the politician. Along the way, he acquires the aid of a taxi driver who has recently returned to Japan after living in South America for several decades and is struggling to cope with poverty and the prejudices of native born Japanese. Actually doesn't sum it up too badly.
No, however, it kind of gets something wrong. So the Peruvian is a native born Japanese. He's just moved over and lived there and come back.
Yes, that's very true.
So that's the only thing that's wrong there. And speaking of the girlfriend thing, the cute ones always die. I know that that's kind of the rule in the films that me and Nathan like to watch. Normally, it's like the cute one is almost always going to die, but this was bloody quick.
Ain't that the truth?
I mean, this happens. This is like the part of the setup of the film. Yeah, where to start with Kamikaze? God, this film is amazing.
I've said it to you before. I think it's an absolute masterpiece. I think it's one of the best films of the 90s, regardless of what country you're talking about.
I agree, and I mean with the director's cut with all the extra and stuff. So this film is kind of like, I mean, this film has a little bit of everything. This is a film that, as you're watching it, it evolves and changes, but it's very much like a social commentary, especially on more right wing Japanese imperialist type viewpoints of older politicians and things.
Yeah, big time. That's exactly what I put in my review. Holy moly.
I don't necessarily want to go through the film because I don't want to spoil too much on this one, but
This is the trouble. It's such a unique film, and I don't mean unique in some form of arty surreal like way like that, but like you said, it covers so many genres, so many themes. There's so much going on under the hood. It's a really difficult one to pin down. I think if we were approaching it like the hard boiled episode, I think it would make it easier.
yeah, which I spoke to Nathan before we started recording, and well, before the Doomed episode started.
The doomed episode.
I do think we'll probably do a deep dive on this someday. No promises as to when, but definitely I think it's an episode we could do. So what is interesting about this film to me from a filmmaking standpoint is the use of documentary style footage and
Yeah,
also the interviews. This film is very much character driven, and again, it's a commentary on Japanese views, and it kind of asks the question, I suppose, in a way, what does it mean to be Japanese?
yeah,
In asking that question, it introduces us to a few different characters beyond the main. So while you have the main thing going on, you've also got all these different side characters that pop up and moments that happen that kind of ultimately flesh out the protagonists along the way.
yeah.
So it's like the politician is a sadist bastard and he's not in a safe way. I mean, he's genuinely violent.
Oh, he's awful.
The setup is obviously there's a Yakuza guy who takes over a young guy who is known for, that family provides escort services, if you will, to this politician. He provides this girl. She's foreign. He knows it's a problem because it's kind of revealed that this guy does not like foreigners. I mean, there's interviews shown on TV, on talk panels and things where he's just incredibly racist. He's very, very
Yeah.
old
He's
school.
full hard right isolationist
Yeah,
policies. He's a real piece of work.
Japan should rule the world. Japan knows
Yeah.
better. The Japanese know better. Every other country's problem is due to them being foreign. Blah 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 blah.
He even blames the Japanese women who became comfort women. He's hardline.
Yeah, and he's very much misogynist as well. You know, he does openly say, because he's asked, that he thinks that part of the problem with modern Japanese society are career women and women who basically aren't in the kitchen. Literally, that's what he says.
Yeah, that's his words.
Because he gets asked, do you believe women just belong in the kitchen? He's like, well, yes. So, this guy's a shit. Anyway, he gets the girl, damages the girl. The girl is under this guy's girlfriend, who we don't learn the name of, I don't think. Well, we might do, I just can't remember it. Basically, he damages her face badly, like so much so that she needs it worked on to get fixed, kind of thing. And his girlfriend is going off in the Yakuza office.
Oh, she loses
She
it.
loses it because she's introduced as quite a fiery, strong character. And basically, she's killed because of it, because it's viewed as her fault, which is then viewed as his fault because the politician guy, his name is Domon, sorry. Domon is angry because she's foreign. She loses it. She gets killed because she loses it. That is the setup, and the setup is life goes on, right? That's the premise. It's like, this is what we do. And there's also these interview segments with the characters, so it's like it pauses on the main lead and he explains how, in again like a documentary style interview, he's just sitting there and he explains, like, I became a Yakuza because XYZ, but I'm not really a true Yakuza because I still have a heart and I want to look after a girl and my mother raised me. And that's something which is unique about this film, because you do get introduced to these characters and you get this little, like, again, it's like a 2-minute documentary thing where the character sort of explains to you their inner thoughts or their past a little bit.
Yeah, it's a very odd way he does it as well. Odd but endearing.
Yeah, it's not jarring. It's almost like news broadcast style.
Yeah.
but it works.
It does work. It really does work, surprisingly. Usually things like that would put me off, but no, it really does work here.
As part of revenge, he devises a plan to steal the politician's money because he finds out that the politician has a stash in his bedroom, because all politicians do, blah, 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 blah. And I have to say right now, this robbery is one of the most clusterfuck things I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, it's glorious.
It is, they get away with the money, but it is, unlike Gonin, where it's like the heist goes wrong, it's like chickens running around with their head cut off trying to rob someone.
Yeah. Yeah, because he gets his friends together, doesn't he? And they just, what's the way to describe it? It's just so chaotic.
Yeah, but it's not chaotic as in, oh my god, chaos.
No.
They fumble it so badly, even in the setup and things, because there's time spent with them where they're talking about how to do it. They're all arguing amongst themselves about the best way to go about doing it, about what they should wear, and things like that. Meanwhile, the main character is actually sitting there and he's like, "This is serious, guys. You realize it?" And supposedly they're all like, "Oh yeah, 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 we realize."
Yeah, they just don't seem to care, and he's like, "We're robbing the Yakuza. They will cut us up and burn us," you know, it's
Yeah, we're robbing the Yakuza and a major politician.
and they just don't care.
No, and unfortunately, their bundles are how they get found very, very quickly. They get tortured and messed with and killed off, and then it becomes just the main character again. And he's made a death pledge to one of his friends about doing a kamikaze attack, which is what that summary is kind of leaning to. But the thing is, he's being hunted down, right? So he can't really go anywhere. While all this is happening, you get introduced to this foreign cab driver. This is something which I think is kind of beautiful about this film and the way it tells its story. Is it's almost like all of these characters come together through happenstance or circumstances.
Yes.
And that's even talked about by one of the characters in the film in her interview segment.
Yep.
And this is where, like I said, it kind of questions what does it mean to be Japanese, because all these people come together and they all have these different viewpoints, but they're sort of going along similar paths or the same path. Their paths have converged, if you will. There's just such a wide range of it, which is why, like I said, it's kind of hard to talk about without spoiling or doing a deep dive. But again, we will someday. You know, it's just really well put together. And it's interesting, right? Because the foreign character, the Peruvian, he's played as the strong silent type and an older type who's like just kind of there. But later on, you kind of find out he's seen some shit. He's been through
Oh,
some shit.
big time. Yeah.
I kind of like that. It's like the young guy who's after revenge, and he's very typical, over the top, young, hot blooded male who's a bit, you know, like, I know what I'm doing. I've got the gun. I'm this guy. I'm this guy. You know, in
Yeah.
reality, he's like, he is, but he isn't.
Yeah, and it's fascinating as well because he sort of as soon as the heist is over and everything's gone wrong, excuse me, and he's on the run, and he meets up with the taxi driver. I forget what the character's name was now, but he's played by Koji Yakusho. Oh, I've got it here on my notes. Sorry, I should have looked. Kantake, Koji Yakusho, Kantake. He accepts his fate so quickly. You know, he's very fatalistic on, and he explains very calmly that he's going on this kamikaze mission. It's there's so many layers to this film that it's unreal. And yeah, sorry, go on, mate.
It's all tied into like these different Japanese archetypes in a way, which is
Yeah.
where I'm saying it questions what it means to be Japanese. But go on.
No. And I think one of the things that really hit me this time, because like I said, this is only the second time I've seen this film, and it will be going in regular rotation from now on. Because every time you see it, it's just more rewarding. I think the one thing that I really took away from it this time is how good Koji Yakusho's performance is.
Yes.
Especially in the sense that this sounds like a really strange observation, but obviously he's one of the best Japanese actors ever.
Hmm.
Widely loved, widely respected, blah blah blah. And this sounds really stupid, but the way he downplays his linguistic ability in this, which I think is a really difficult thing to get right on screen. Like if me and you were to pretend to each other now that we can't speak English, we'd sound dumb.
Nanikore?
No, but do you know what I mean? If we suddenly downplayed our ability to speak English, do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yes, no, I get it. No, he does because the idea is the general idea with him is he's been in Peru so long that he can speak Japanese, but he's still relearning it.
Yeah.
He speaks broken Japanese and he doesn't know how to read a lot of it, and there's words that he just doesn't get. It's that he's playing that sort of foreigner, if you will, and he does
Yeah.
a bloody good job of it. Like like Nathan said, he does a really, really good job.
And I think the chemistry between them as well, because as soon as this robbery's gone wrong, it suddenly switches gears from being, if you want to boil it down to a crime film, it becomes this road movie.
Yeah, sort of, because basically the premise is he uses this taxi driver as a way of having a sanctuary, if you like. It's like he uses him to do what he needs to do, but it's also a way of him staying on the run and not being caught and staying safe.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of it as well is that was a really good description. It becoming this sanctuary. I think it is not just physically either. It's a mental sanctuary away from everything for him, because they build up this connection.
Yeah. The interesting thing is too, I've forgotten the name of the taxi, the exact name of the taxi, but the name of the taxi company translates to something wind. Not divine wind, it's another type of wind, because in Japan they name winds differently, right? There's kind of a spiritual element to this story that is linked to the whole kamikaze thing, which again, I don't want to get into too much because it'll spoil, but there's a very, like I said, sort of like just a spiritual element beyond what's happening on screen
Yeah.
that doesn't get fully realized till later in the movie, but this movie sort of changes its tone so often because it goes from being, as Nathan pointed out, like a crime revenge thing, Yakuza thing, almost typical Yakuza thing, to sort of this, as Nathan called it, a road movie. Then it sort of becomes the characters talking to each other and trying to sort of help each other, but in a way that's like they're helping each other with their problems. So it's like the young guy helps this foreigner speak better Japanese and tries to teach him things along the way. I don't know what the term for it is in film because it's not the type of film I usually watch. It's like very character growth, characters interacting with each other and just helping each other out and sort of like
Yeah.
discovering things about themselves and sorting their problems out and stuff like that, because it kind of trucks along, but equally the Yakuza are hunting for the young guys, so that's still a consistent element, if you like.
Yeah, all the time while they're on this sort of journey of self-discovery and redemption, with this backdrop of the Yakuza still after them, and it's amazing. It really is.
Yeah, it is, and it never once feels too slow. I mean, the film itself is a bit slow, but it doesn't feel slow. To my mind, the culmination of it is when they reach after he meets the girl again, and then they go to the onsen.
Oh my god. That scene, man.
That is trippy, but it's not trippy in a way of like it's actually trippy. It's like suddenly the film like goes to a next level of depth.
Yeah. The self-realization seminar.
Yeah, because it talks about one of the themes in this is like the new age religion and how many cults there are in Japan, which at the time there was a lot of, right? They were constantly popping up, and all of this stuff. And it was like, join this cult will make your life better, have a near death experience, have a, whatever. And I think that in a roundabout way, this film kind of explores that spiritual side too. Like it gives a tongue in cheek commentary on the practical side of it. Then it suddenly decides to embrace it in a Japanese way with Shintoism.
Yes.
There's a whole like 15-minute segment. I think it's 15 minutes. I know it's a while. They're being led by this person to an inner journey of self discovery through exercises. And the tone changes is the best way to describe it, because it becomes serious but light at the same time. But at the end of
Yeah.
it, sorry, go on.
No, I was just agreeing. And I think to if we were to break that scene down and actually describe to people what's happening in that scene, I actually think it would sound off-putting. Does that make sense? Because I think if you were to explain it, it would sound so fucking absurd.
Okay. So personally, for those who don't know me, I've had a lot of Asian in my upbringing. Okay. As in like cultural through various families, and it's been part of my family, even though I'm not Asian. And to me, all of it made sense. But that's because I think it's because I have that background, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, to me, again, it made sense. It made perfect sense. In fact, it made too much sense in a way. But I think if you were to explain what's actually happening in that scene
Yeah.
with Charlie Chaplin running around and all this these things that would sound so absurd, yet somehow it comes together in this cohesive whole. It's really quite something. It's very self-reflective.
Yes, and it's almost healing for the characters involved, not in the sense of it sorts their problems out, but this isn't what it is, but it's the equivalent of, when people would say like, I've become a yoga practitioner and it changed my life.
Yeah.
It's the equivalent of that if you look at it at face value. However, if you see what's actually happening, it's really working. And
Yeah.
it's the thing is none of it's like fantastical. It's very grounded, and it's some of it are genuine techniques that's used in therapy. It's just presented in a Japanese way here. It's just a really it kind of comes out of nowhere. So, like Nathan said, just the principle of it would put some people off, and I think if you're watching it without maybe knowing that that's going to happen, that might put you off if that's really not your thing,
Yeah, I think it would make it sound far too surreal and art house.
which it isn't.
No, no.
This film is quite grounded in its practicality as much as stuff gets crazy. A lot of what happens is like based on actual human behavior. So that's where it's not, even though when I say it's like spiritual, it's like human spiritual. It's not
Hmm.
like arty farty, so to speak, like esoteric. It's not really like that at all. Which is why I kind of brought up for me that I've had a bit of an upbringing with that sort of thing around me. So it didn't protrude me.
No, and I think trying to think of the way to describe this as well. I think because the background to that scene is that the I forget the character's name, but it's Tomoru Taguchi, the actor. Is he used to be to run a cult, isn't it?
He used to be a teacher.
Yeah, and there's all these things around. Well, there's a few things around cults in this film, and I think it's both critical of them and not critical of them, which I find fascinating. In because the sarin gas attack happened that year, didn't it?
Yes.
Was that 95? I forget the name of that cult. Ohm,
Yeah,
maybe something
yeah,
like
I
that.
can't remember. Yeah.
And I just find that whole aspect to it. I mean, there's just so much going on in this film. You could sit and pick it up for hours, literally.
Mhm.
Yeah. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I was just agreeing with you. Yeah, this film has a lot that goes on, and that's where I say, like, I don't want to get too far into the end because it would spoil a lot of things. I mean, that cult scene, for example, or the self-realization scene is also that is kind of a spoiler, but it's very important, which is why I've mentioned it. When I was watching it back again, I was kind of baffled that this has been so forgotten because or it's not been picked up again for a re-release or something.
Yeah, it is. It's baffling. It really is.
It seems like to me the sort of thing like Third Window might put out.
Yeah, or even Arrow.
It's just really, really good. Again, I prefer the director's cut because I have seen the international cut in the past, but having watched the director's cut a couple times now, I do. That's definitely my preferred version of the film because the international cut's still good. Don't get me wrong, but it's missing bits that just kind of like elevate the film.
Yeah, and I think with how again, like I think I might have actually mentioned it in Gonin. It's another critically acclaimed film that's completely forgotten.
Yep.
And I had one person message me, and I had one person comment on my Letterboxd review about how it's actually quite an important film for people of South American Japanese descent, on how it looks into the diaspora, and that aspect as well, which we only sort of glossed over, because again, it's one of those things we could talk about for hours. I think for that aspect alone, it puzzles me why it doesn't get more attention as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's just really well done. As Nathan pointed out, that is very, very important. Again, we're glossing over it because, like you said, we could just talk and talk and talk and talk about that. You know, and equally, I'll admit, I don't like focusing too much on any one part of this film because I think it takes away from another.
Absolutely.
So that's why I say, like, the only thing I would say overall is that it's a commentary on being Japanese.
Yeah.
And asking the question, what does it mean to really be Japanese in modern day? And
Yeah.
it presents all these different types of Japanese characters at the same time. Because there's even one who's like a university graduate that's mentioned who gets involved with the Yakuza, and apparently the Yakuza was supposed to just be a part-time gig.
That's right. I'd forgotten about that.
The crazy thing is, it's like 2 lines. It nails that type of person, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's very, very revealing. That's what I'm saying. There's lots of, like, as well as the big picture stuff, there's lots of these little moments with different people that are introduced where it's like it shows what type of typical Japanese person archetype they are, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's like the prostitute who gets killed. She's a modern woman. She's a modern woman who's not necessarily educated, but she's independent, works hard, wants to have a successful relationship, things like that. That's all talked about because it talks about how she's 26, she's getting older, she's not married yet, because back then, it's still a bit of a thing now, but back then there used to be a real thing about women who weren't married over 25.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all these, and that's just like a small conversation that happens in a scene that's like a couple minutes long. You know what I mean? There's all these little things that just give so much more to these characters, even if they're only in the film for 10 minutes at a time or 10 minutes altogether or something.
Yeah, it's amazing how much he crammed into the script. I mean, it's so ambitious and so well realized.
Yeah,
You know, it's quite an accomplishment, really.
absolutely. So, was there anything else I wanted to highlight? Oh, I like the ending sequence a lot. It's not bombastic or anything, but it's just so different for that type of scene that you would normally see.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, it's quite subtle, as well as revealing certain things that were hinted at along the way. Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, this is definitely a layered film that as you watch it, the layers come away. And it does a very good job at not giving you too much at once, but it's like there's always more. There's always more. So the moment you
Yeah,
think you've got it, you haven't. But not in a way
yeah,
that's a twist. It's just there's more to it than that.
yeah, but it's never overwhelming either.
No.
It's interesting in that respect, and how well balanced it is.
So yeah, I mean, again, Kamikaze, we will do a dedicated episode on at some point in the future. Yeah, that's our first element of Media Blasters May, I suppose.
Yeah,
Some really strong films they put out back in the day. I mean, they're still putting out good stuff, obviously, but I think people forget the kinds of movies they used to put out because obviously they've attracted a bit of a new, younger crowd nowadays, which is great for them. But,
yeah,
you know, obviously it's heavily centered around a different kind of film at the moment, though we are still getting some of the classics being brought back and things. And I'm really excited. I think they've got a strong future, and I'm really excited to see where they go. And yeah, I mean, like I said, we'll be talking about more modern films. So the lineup for the next Media Blasters May episode is Fudo,
Ooh, baby.
Hakaida, which is tokusatsu, and Lady Ninja Konoichi. Or Konoichi, sorry, Lady Ninja, which is the English title, which is a Kuze film.
It certainly is.
Looking forward to talking about that. Always dig into some more Ozawa. It's like, can never go wrong with Ozawa, really.
What a man Hitoshi Ozawa is. You got to love him. Sorry, I've just moved slightly. Is the sound still okay?
It's fine. No, it's better now, actually. Thank you guys for listening. That episode will be dropping some point in May, hopefully over the next week or two. And then we've got the birthday episode, the Fox Day episode.
Holy shit.
Tell them, Nathan,
That's the
you
big
can
one.
talk. Don't reveal the titles yet. We're revealing next time. But yeah.
I'm not allowed to reveal the titles?
No, but you can talk about it.
I have nothing to say then. Just be excited for it.
Yeah. No, I mean, when Nathan was asking me and we were talking about it, and I was like, it took me forever to come up with titles because I have a lot of favorites, but very few like super favorites that really stick out. And it was kind of hard for me to pick because there was some that was going through my head that would work better in a different format, if that makes sense. So it was like, what can I do? What can I do? And then I just came up with it, and Nathan was like, right, can we record that tomorrow?
Damn straight. It's about damn time. Yeah, I'm very excited for that one. It's a hint would be to say that it's a favorite genre of mine, which, well, actually, I don't think many people who listen to this podcast will know me, so that's probably not a great big hint, but it's going to be a good one for sure.
Yes. So once again, guys, thank you for listening. Again, apologies if there's a bit of a difference in audio quality in this episode. We've had to swap between recording platforms and things and stuff, and I've still got to go away and figure out how we're going to do the next couple of episodes. So, yes. Kind of.
The rice finds a way, though, so do not panic.
Yes, I'm very good at that. So, yes, thank you all for listening. Happy May. Happy Media Blasters May. Buy their products, check them out. We'll be talking about some more modern releases of theirs next episode. So stay tuned. And until then, enjoy the rice. It's very nice.
Very nice.